This video is the first in a series covering 5 of the best new features in Ableton Live 11, which is still in public beta as of December 2020. There are a ton of amazing new features and enhancements in Live 11, but for now we're going to zoom in on the new chance tools in the piano roll. My name is Brian Jackson, and I'm a music producer, musician, audio engineer, author, educator, and Ableton certified trainer based in Brooklyn, New York. In addition to all the cool new features in Live 11, Ableton has largely redesigned the clip view. They've added even more options for working with chance and randomness, which is what we're going to focus on here, because they allow us to easily add more natural feels to our performances, and they do enhance a lot of the common electronic music creative process workflows. So this video specifically is going to focus on the new expression lanes here in the Notes tab. In a future video, I'm going to cover the new MPE features visible in the new Expression tab, which is right over here. And there we'll find things like per note pitch bend and additional expression lanes for doing all kinds of cool stuff. But MPE is a pretty big topic, and I'm going to come back to that in some more detail really soon. So let's start by looking at the MIDI velocities here in this basic drum beat and on this basic synth bass part. The most common MIDI messages that we deal with are called note on and note off. So when you press a key, it sends a note on message, and when you let go, it sends a note off message. And the velocity value is sent with both of those messages, though the note off or release velocity is usually ignored. And there are some uses for those, but not as many as there are for note on. And the idea behind velocity in MIDI is, if you think about it in the physical world, the harder you hit something or the harder you pluck a string, anything like that, the louder and brighter that sound is going to be. So the basic idea behind MIDI velocity is that it's going to control those types of things. So it's going to be volume and filter values in most cases. But in theory, it can be pretty much used to modulate most any parameter, especially in live. And we'll look at a few things in Wavetable briefly a little bit later. Let's start by looking at these hi-hats in this drum pattern. And if we look down here, we'll see that they all have the same velocity. And so let's give it a listen. And it's not that exciting. All of them sound the same. It's kind of mechanical, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, unless you want it to sound a little bit more natural or perhaps just a little more interesting. Let's jump over to the bass part. And we can see here that all of these notes have the same velocity value, and they are all equally as loud. So let's randomize some of the velocities within a range on these drums. To do this, we're going to hold down Command. If you're on Windows, you can hold Control, and then you just drag up or down to give each note a velocity range. So before doing that, I moved a few of the handles up or down already for a little more variation, and then I gave them a range. To see our ranges, just click on the associated note, or if you want to select everything on a note, just click on the piano roll here and this selects all the notes. And down below, we can see all of the ranges that I've assigned to these hi-hats. Let's jump over to the bass part, and I'm going to hit Command A to select all. And if we look down here, we can see that there's both positive and negative deviations. And if we want to see the exact amount on any specific note, we can just look over here. Let's jump over to the device view, and let's look at how this wavetable patch is using velocity to modulate a bunch of different parameters. And this allows us to get subtle, semi-random timbre changes every time it loops around. And I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this velocity modulation on this filter cutoff and give it a listen. And now let's put that back. So I think we should jump back to the very first scene. I'm going to launch it here and just give a listen to the basic versions. And now the versions with the velocity ranges. So just by changing the velocity ranges a bit on each of these patterns, we're starting to give a little more interest to our performances. There are other ways you can get similar results, but they involve a lot more steps and it can get quite elaborate and tedious, so I'm glad we now have these features built right in. Let's keep going. Right below the MIDI Velocity editor is the new Probability Editor expression lane. This lane allows us to set a note chance percentage. Simply stated, it's how likely that note will play or not play at all. So 50-50 would mean half the time it'll play, half it won't. 100% it always plays. Here's our drum beat with multiple probability markers set at less than 100. And we can just select the notes to see which markers are associated with them. You may have noticed that I added a few more notes to this bass part. And then if we look down here, we can see that they all have an assortment of probability values. So let's go back to where we started. Let's listen to the basic scene, the velocity range scene, velocity ranges and probabilities. So these are just a few examples. There's a lot of things you can do with these, and this is really just a quick introduction to these new features that we have in Live 11. In the next video, I'm going to show you the basics of MIDI Polyphonic Expression, another of my top 5 best new features that Ableton has added to Live 11. If you enjoyed the content in this video, please make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the like button.